In 1947, in Ridgway, Pennsylvania, 6 people vanished after walking into a mysterious, thick fog, following the voice of a dead loved one. The eerie phenomenon began on the morning of October 9th, when a dense, unnatural fog rolled into town without warning, blanketing the small town and plunging it into terror. It swallowed the streets in an eerie silence, and by the next morning, 6 people had vanished. The first to go missing was Margaret Dalton, a secretary for the county courthouse. Helen Walker, Margaret's neighbor, reported hearing Margaret calling out, "Thomas? Thomas, is that you?" as she apprehensively walked from her front door into the fog. Thomas was the name of her late husband, who had passed some years earlier. Margaret was never seen again. 9-year-old Harold Roy was playing in his front yard before school with his older sister Patricia when he stood up suddenly and asked, "Did you hear that?" while staring confused into the fog. Having heard nothing, Patricia asked what he was talking about. A moment later, Harold turned to her excitedly and said, "It's Grandma," and with that, he ran into the fog. Patricia later told authorities that she had followed right behind him into the dense fog, but Harold had vanished. 48-year-old dressmaker Edith Briggs was last seen by her customer, Barbara Cooper, who had come to pick up an order just after lunch. Edith paused mid-sentence and stared into the foggy street. Barbara said Edith's eyes started to fill with tears as she whispered, "Oh, it's Mary." Before Barbara could say anything, Edith ran straight into the fog, leaving the door to her shop swinging open. Edith had a daughter named Mary who had died of pneumonia as a child. A 17-year-old high school senior, Walter Stewart, was walking home from school in the fog with friends when he suddenly stopped in his tracks. His friends say he called out, "Dad?" with a solemn look on his face. Walter's father was missing in action, presumed dead during the war 3 years earlier. He called out to his father again, and then turned to his friends crying and saying, "It's my dad." Walter stepped deeper into the fog alone and was never seen again. Agnes Waverly, a 62-year-old retired schoolteacher, and 34-year-old farmer Frederick Collins also vanished without a trace that day, though no one witnessed their disappearances. It is presumed they too followed the haunting voices of deceased loved ones, vanishing into the terrifying abyss. By dusk, the town was paralyzed with fear, but not everyone who heard voices followed them. Many reported hearing the chilling voices of loved ones past, one of whom was Frank Willis, a logger, who claimed he heard his father, who had died in a mill accident years earlier, calling his name. Frank told authorities that the voice sounded exactly like his deceased father, but he was too frightened to follow it into the fog, knowing that it couldn't possibly have been his father. By morning, the fog that had gripped the town in terror had vanished as suddenly as it arrived. Searches for the missing turned up nothing. No bodies, no clues, no trails leading out of town. What happened in Ridgway that day remains a horrifying mystery. To this day, no one knows where the voices came from or where the missing went.